I'm delighted to be back in Charlotte, and if we can get that to stay down for 4 hours, I'm going to call my doctor. There we go. If I could wear a watch, that might be a record for getting to, below the waist. Which makes me, when I saw this podium, I got a little nervous because I just have this recurring sort of nightmare that I stand up at one of these things and I go through so many airports that you get a view of me from the waist down, every now and then. And someone will shout, "Oh my God, he's a woman." Yeah. I'm always happy to be in Charlotte and know where the hell I am. Because I get lost in this town more often than any other place in the United States. When a street, it doesn't change direction, but it changes names. And when it changes direction and doesn't change names, yeah. And when you get 5 streets that are named the same, but are in entirely different parts of town, that's a recipe for an Irishman, to just, I couldn't find my ass with a set of deer antlers, I got some history here at Quail Hollow, some of which, while it may not be, particularly polite, for polite company, I think with this being the final breakfast, I can probably tell you some stories that aren't particularly well known. One of which involves one T. Woods. Now, T. Woods and I would occasionally get into the occasional juvenile how shall I put this politely, farting contest. And it's not one of those things where, you can say that, you over there, I did one. It's got to be a drive-by. Yeah. It has to be an audible, or it doesn't count. So, and I have never beaten Tiger Woods at anything in my career as a broadcaster, and I didn't play against him except in a couple of exhibition matches shortly after I quit and became a broadcaster, both of which he royally kicked my ass. So at Quail Hollow here about 5 years ago, I was actually in front, or no, I was tied with 4 holes to play, and we call those 4 holes the green mile, 15, 16, 17, and 18, because they measure pretty much exactly a mile, and well, they're green. And we're tied at about 6 each, and I'm thinking, I've got a serious chance here. So I'm walking off the 15th tee, I think to myself, I'm in shape here for I can make this 2. As it turns out, it was 1.5, and the other half wasn't good at all. But it's one of those things that a man knows, ladies won't be aware of this. The worst thing you can do when a wee accident happens, is go in and investigate. You just walk it off. Walk it off. Just keep walking. I'll be fine, no problem. It's never as bad as you think, just walk it off. But it's 94 degrees or something, and the 15th is a very long hole. And by the time I get to the top of the hill, I'm walking like Gary Cooper, like this, and it's now got to the stage where it's a bit painful. My butt looks like the Japanese flag, and I did mention this wasn't very polite, didn't I? Yeah. So he's gone in front of me at this stage, and I'm out of the contest. I can no longer compete, so I stagger on the way in, and I'm praying that we are going to crash off the air. We've finished just about in time, at 6 o'clock Eastern, but there's about 4 minutes left. So it's borderline whether he's going to come out of the scores tent, whether or not I'm going to have to interview him. So I'm standing there like this thinking, oh, please, God, take your time, take your time, take your time. Here he comes. Oh, here we go. So Nance is in commercial, and I get Tiger, and we'd call, a lockdown. My cameraman is in front of me, and his camera's on sticks, and he's got me in the frame and room for Tiger on the left, in front of the CBS banner. So he comes and he stands behind me, and there's about 30 seconds of the commercial left. We're making small talk, and I said, hey, well played today. It's a good chance tomorrow. Yeah, thanks very much. And he goes, he said, did you fart? So we got about 15 seconds before we come back now, and I said to him, not exactly. and he looks at me and he says, oh, you didn't. I said, yeah, I did. Oh, Christ. He says, you got to go clean yourself up. And I looked at him and said, I'm not sure if I'm finished yet. And at which point, he doubled up. He blew a snot bubble and went like this. And I hear Nance throwing it to me. So now we've got a shot of me, supposedly with Tiger Woods, except he's not in the picture, he's down here. So I've got him by the belt, and I'm trying to pull him up like this here. He's laughing, the tears are coming down his face, And I said, well, I'm down here with our leader who's has got something going with his shoelaces here. It's like... And when he comes up, he doesn't realize that we're on. He says, dude, you're a sick individual, And that was me. I was gone, So the interview consisted of him blowing a snot bubble, bending over, and then me just, like bursting out laughing. My producer is yelling at me, what the hell is wrong with you two? You're on national television, As bad a shape as this country is in, at times, we think, it's America. There's a set of rules that the Founding Fathers set up that are genius. It'll be fine. We'll be fine in this country. It's the greatest place in the world. It's a place where we can come to somewhere like Quail Hollow and have a golf tournament. And no matter what Barney Frank says, this is the way business is done. You're 1%ers in this room, most of you. And the reason that you're here is that you wanted to be in a place where you knew you were going to be uncomfortable. And that's how you become successful in America. You do the things that unsuccessful people don't want the responsibility for. It's the same in school. You do the things that the kids that don't have the 4.2 grade average, you do the things that they don't want to do. Because with success comes pressure. I never won a major championship because I would see my name in the leaderboard, and I remember the 89 Open at Troon, walking past the leaderboard, and it was Greg Norman, Mark Calcavecchia. I finished about 6th or something. And I would always miss a putt on the last 9 holes of a major championship. And looking back, there was a subconscious, but there was a deliberateness to it, because I didn't want the responsibility, that was going to come with. If I hold this one, I'm going to have a real chance to win this thing. I'm not sure that I want to, And you see examples of players that do win major championships that find out afterwards that they didn't want the responsibility. Maybe David Duval, Ian Baker Finch, my great friend, who won the 91 Open Championship, and since then, if you put him on the deck of an aircraft carrier, he couldn't hit the sea. And it's the same in business. It's the same in the entertainment industry or whatever. The people who are successful are the ones who do the things that, the rest of the crowd goes, I kind of like it here with my head down. If I stick it up, I'm going to be a target. And whether or not it's a police chief, a fire chief, the CEO, a champion golfer, the president of the United States, or whatever, they do the things that unsuccessful people don't want to do. And that's what makes America great. And it turns us, into a crowd of people in a room that raises money for things like the Ronald McDonald House. Excuse me. This is for you, oddly enough. Very strange. Yeah, I'm not answering that. This is the greatest charitable institution in the world. We're responsible for the greatest good deed that one country has ever done for another in the history of the world. We've given Iraq the chance to have a country like ours. Now, whether they take it or not is another story, but I'll give you one story about my foundation before I finish here. We have a program called Proper Exit, Operation Proper Exit, where we take soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines back to the place where they were hit, back to where they were injured, and give them a chance to see the results of the operation that they were involved in. Because very often they're in a firefight 1 minute, and the next thing that they know, they've been medevaced out. They go to a Code 3 stabilizing hospital there, and then they're on the C-17 hospital ship that flies them back to either Walter Reed or Brooke Army Medical Center in San Antonio. and they're in an induced coma. And they might wake up 3 months later, missing limbs, missing an eye, severely burned, whatever. And the last thing they remember is being in a firefight, what they were trained to do. And they're devastated, absolutely devastated. They have survivor's guilt very often. They feel like a failure, that they didn't complete their mission, that they let down their teammates. And this post-traumatic stress disorder is basically shell shock. They used to call it shell shock. My grandfather fought at the Battle of the Somme in the Great War. I don't know what was great about it. It wasn't great at all. Where the Royal Enniskillen Fusiliers lost 95% of their battalion, and he was one of the 5% who came home. He was 21 years old, and he never spoke another word for the rest of his life. Died when I was 10, and we just thought there was something wrong with Papa's throat, but he was dumbstruck wading through body parts and blood and mud and the remains of his brothers in arms, and just was unable to speak. And he would write down the names of the trees, which is why I know what they are when I'm in them. Spent most of my career in them, actually. And we get these kids that are equally dumbstruck, because you're walking along with your comrades, and next minute one of his their heads explode or something like that, or they come across the remains of a child that's been skinned alive in front of his parents. These are not humans. They're not part of our species. They refuse to evolve. You can't believe what our young men and women have witnessed and what they've been forced to do. Shooting a 13-year-old. Hell yeah, you shoot him. He's carrying an AK-47 and he's liable to, kill your buddy. That's just part of what war is like these days. So we take them back to this place, and Kenny Butler was a member of the legendary 82nd Airborne, and he was what they call a lay-low jumper, low altitude, low opening, and the life expectancy is about 20 jumps. If you can get through 20 jumps and you're still alive, that's amazing, because you pile out of the back of a C-17 or C-130 on a static line, and your chute isn't open 2 seconds before you hit the ground, and they'll drop you straight into the hornet's nest. You better be shooting your AR-15 or whatever you've got, when you hit the ground. Kenny had been through 14 of these jumps, and he was in a house searching it for some bad guy. And the house next door, there was a child's head on a stick. That's the sort of people that we're talking about here, where they've been seen cooperating with the Americans. And somebody threw a shaped charge into the house through a broken window, and it exploded, and it went clean through Kenny's thorax, through his chest here, took out both of his lungs, and went straight through his left arm, took it off like that. Kenny woke up three months later. 1 minute he's an elite warrior, and the next he feels like a cripple that left his teammates. And but he was so stoic about it, but you could tell that Kenny was always close to the edge of doing something. He felt the world would be a better place without him. So we took him back, convinced to take him back, and he went into the same house. Everybody stays, a couple hundred yards back, and it's a different scene. 2.5 years later, there are children playing in the streets. Where the house was with the child's head on the stick, outside it's no longer there. It's a pile of rubble. But our soldiers have built a playground. There's a jungle gym, a seesaw, a merry-go-round, and various playground equipment for kids. Kenny goes into the house that he got blown up in, and finally loses it, goes down on the ground on his knees and picks the dust up off the floor and wipes it on his face, and he's in tears, and then he hears laughter. So he wipes his face off and he goes over to the window and looks out, and there are children playing. They're on a seesaw, they're on the merry-go-round or whatever, and he hears the laughter again. And just as he looks down, about an 8-year-old Iraqi girl with this beautiful long black curly hair and these bright green eyes looks up like this and sees him, and a tear falls off the end of his nose and lands on her forehead, whatever, and she smiles at him. And Kenny looks down, and she's wearing jeans and a T-shirt and sneakers, and her socks are from Walmart. And she's reading a book in English called See Spot Run. And in that moment, Kenny's depression disappeared. Like a cloud above him, it just dissolved and fell to the floor. In that moment, he understood that he had been part of a mission that had given half the population of that country the opportunity to educate their girls. The last time he was there, little girls had to run around in a full black burqa just a letterbox, whatever. They'd be beaten if you could see any part of their face. Men had to paint their windows shut in case a neighbor saw his wife indoors. And here's a girl reading a book. They're not allowed to read. They're not allowed to drive. They're not allowed to read, not even the Quran. Now, reading a book that we've all read our children. Kenny saw this and realized that he hadn't lost his arm. He'd given it away in order that this little girl and every other little girl in the country could have the chance for a life that we have in America. So just give yourselves a pat on the back every now and then for being American. We are the people who facilitate that kind of thing. We spent a lot of money doing this. It was one of the most generous acts. And, our president at the time received a lot of criticism and still does, whatever. He'll go down in history as one of the greats. He really will, because of what we did and what we continue to do. Because there's a little country over there called Israel, that's kind of important. The Israelis, so many Nobel Peace Prize winners and great writers, scientists, and all they want is this crappy little piece of desert in the Middle East and to be left alone. You think we can manage that? Apparently not. There's a horde of 4th century and just savages that want to see them off the face of the earth. And if we leave that area, now they will push the button down. Yeah, because they're nuts. Yeah, they will. They'll push the button down. But we're there, and we're going to stay there. And every one of us should be proud of the young men and women that we send over there who are willing to go over there and keep these savages from our shores. Because skinning children alive, that's what they want to do to ours. And if they get here, that's what we're going to see. So to have the opportunity to come here and speak to you and to be involved in a tournament like the Wells Fargo, at a place like Quail Hollow, in a country like America, and to watch these men just try to get the ball in the hole with a stick, as meaningless as it seems, it's a diversion that we're entitled to because of those great men who founded this country only 200 years ago. Egypt is 5,000 years old. It's screwed. We're only 200. We need to give ourselves a chance every now and then. I'm so proud of being an American. I'm very proud that you would even think about having me here to speak to you. I'm sorry I didn't get to much golf, but I can come back. Yeah. Thank you.